Okay.
We rolling?
We're rolling.
Cool. Hey everybody, I'm Ryder. I'm going to tie some of my favorite bugs for you. We're going to start with this cool little mayfly pattern. It's a cool pattern because you can kind of switch it up and make it whatever you want to match the hatch. There it is. It's got a little hot spot on it. It's kind of cripple style. And those three little tails is what really makes it stand out. So we'll tie one in blue wing real quick. This pattern's got a pretty low profile, which I kind of like. Rides low in the water. But that little post sticking out of the front kind of helps to see it. So I'm using 70 denier in olive. And I'm just going to rib it with more 70 denier in watery olive. I'm going to start my thread. And then put in this watery olive. I'm just going to take the strand and feed it under the strand like that to the other side, my side, and pull it down. Then I can start making touching wraps. You want to go to about where the hook eye is on the hook. You can see that, where the hook eye kind of ends. That's your proportions, maybe even a little bit further than that. Touching wraps back up to the front. And you could move your bobbin cradle here and put this thread out of the way. I've found it's just easier to whip finish and cut it off. It's definitely not your production style, but it makes it a little easier to rib the fly. So I'm going to give my bobbin a clockwise spin just to tighten that thread up a little bit. But not as tight as you might think. I don't want it to bulge out of the other thread. So I'm going to give it a couple turns at the bottom here, overlapping to kind of give it that hot spot right at the butt. You can see how that shows up. And then just make spiral wraps to add that kind of ribbing effect. And then I'll whip finish that watery olive. And we're done with it for now. Okay, now we're going to reattach our olive and go to about the hook point here. And now we're ready to tie in those tails. Those tails are this moose body. I'll show up a little better. We're going to grab 3 of them. And this is a good chance to use some compromised hairs on your patch because we don't need them very long. So I just got 3 of those. I'm just going to even them up by pulling the tips in line. I don't use a stacker on this one or anything. In fact, I think it looks kind of cool when they don't match up just perfect, but they're close. Something like that. So the length on these isn't going to be crazy long, but you want it to stick maybe something like that from the back of the tail. Something so that they show up and have that cool kind of profile, but not so long that they look out of place to the fish or you. So I'm just going to take some wraps forward towards the eye. Secure those in. should mention it now. It's easy to crowd the eye on this fly, so the whole time we're doing this, we're making sure to leave ourselves just a little bit of room there. So the easiest way to splay these tails is to just kind of take your thumbnail and push them up like that. And you'll see how that kind of splayed them out just for me, how I want. Take a few wraps back, and then for splitting them, don't make it harder than it needs to be. Let's see if I can show you. I'm going to take my first wrap around this outside tail, one wrap. Pull the tail closest to you, one wrap. Redo that. Is that better? There you go. Yeah. One wrap around the tail closest to me, wrap around the hook shank. One wrap around the tail farther from me. Oh, I keep slipping. There we go. And then wrap around the hook shank. So that's just going to make sure that once it starts fishing, that it stays where you want it. You can lie to yourself and say it looks great at the vise, but as soon as it hits the water, if you don't splay them like that, it's going to end up looking like one tail. So that's kind of what we're looking for. So now we're going to tie in that post. And it's this pear post from Hairline. And you don't want to use a whole strand on a size 16 like this. So I pull out just, I don't know, 1/3 of a normal strand out of the package. We're just going to put it on the front there and kind of pinch it to the hook shank. Pinch it pretty good. Take one kind of loose wrap, pull towards yourself, another loose wrap towards yourself, and then tighten it up. And then we're going to go ahead and move that all the way back to our tails. So instead of just nipping that off clean, we're going to leave a little tag end, just like a classic cripple looking fly. Nothing crazy, but something like that. All right, now's the fun part. We're going to use some hackle. This is just brown saddle hackle from Whiting. And a cool tip for tying this stuff in is instead of just stripping off these fibers at the bottom, you can pull them out like that and give them a little trim. Nice and close. And then you have a little something for your thread to grab into, so it doesn't pull out quite as easy. So I'm going to tie that in closest to me. And then add a little bit of dubbing just so that hackle fiber has something to grab into. I've been using this, let's see, fine natural dubbing from Nature Spirit. It's not going to cooperate, but there it is in this blue winged olive color. It's pretty cool. And I'm just taking enough to dirty the thread, so like that much, hardly any. Enough that I can hardly see it when I pull it out of the pack. And make the thinnest noodle you've ever seen. Something like that. I'm just going to take some touching wraps up to the hook eye. And start wrapping the hackle. You can make the hackles dense or as thin as you want to. And I've oversized it a little bit on purpose because I'm going to trim that bottom off.
We got a question coming in here. Got Matthew Weldon from Facebook asking here. What's going to be the ticket this year with no flush? Since they're not doing the flush this year, it's actually not going to affect the fishing a whole lot. So just whatever bugs are working, kind of right now. Fish are eating a lot of midges, a lot of annelids, scuds, leeches, worms, that kind of stuff right now. But we'll see some dirty water here, just from all the snow melt. But yeah, because there won't be a flush, it's not really going to affect the fishing a whole lot. Keep the questions coming, guys.
Cool. All I did was tie that hackle off once I got to the front, snuck my thread under our post, and whip finished. And now all we got to do is trim some stuff. When I trim this hackle, so I don't like to come in and just start snipping, I'll just kind of open up my scissors barely like that and just push them into the base of that hackle, and it'll cut it without compromising any of the other fibers you wrapped. Trim this post just a little bit taller than your hackle is, and it's going to stick out kind of in front of the fly in kind of a way that you might not be used to seeing, but it gives it kind of that crippled, fail to emerge effect. And then to keep it riding low, we're going to trim off, got a stray fiber, this bottom hackle flush. So to do that, I usually just flip my fly over and start at the hook eye here and just trim it. So you can see how it has kind of that classic mayfly profile, an adult mayfly profile, but you also kind of have the shank of the hook with that hot spot, maybe giving it kind of a egg laying effect or just something that makes it stand out from the rest. And our tails didn't quite cooperate, but they look all right. So I'm going to tie the same fly, but in a different color, kind of a PMD color. And for the post, I'm going to use CDC. So everything will be pretty much the same, except for the color and that CDC. And that's the fun thing about the flies. You can create completely different species of mayfly just by a couple simple changes. I like this pattern for tricos, but blue wings is where it probably reigns supreme, and it's almost that time of year. So I'm just going to swap out some thread.
I've got another question coming in here from Taylor on Facebook. What sizes do you like to tie these in?
16 is my favorite, but you can get as small as you want. 20s is kind of tough because that hackle doesn't have much room on a small scud size hook like this. 16 is probably my favorite, but you could go up to like a 12 if you wanted for, like, say, a drake or something. I guess that's why I like this fly so much, is it doesn't really matter. You can kind of match it to whatever mayfly you're trying to imitate. And I should tell you, I'm using this Komodo scud hook.
Gotta get closer to the hook of the manual there. There you go. Ooh, a little further back. Close enough.
Okay, and I like these Komodo hooks because they're not crazy expensive, and I think 50 come in a pack, which is pretty cool.
Thanks for the question there, Taylor. Y'all keep them coming.
I only packed 2 bobbins, so bear with me. Okay, cool. I'm using this Montana Fly Company A-Dot for this one. And just use whatever thread you like. You kind of want something that lays flat since we're doing a thread body, but pretty much anything will work. Same thing, we're going to start our thread, leaving a little bit of space behind the eye. This is light brown, and we're ribbing with dark brown. Same thing. You just take it on your thread like that, and then you wrap it around the other side of the hook. and you can pull it. Again, kind of right there where that hook eye is.
Matthew's digging the tunes.
Oh, I threw a playlist together real quick. Hopefully my Justin Bieber doesn't start playing.
Get some Kesha up in here.
Big Kesha guy. All right, and then we're going to give it that clockwise spin just to quarter our thread up. With this dark brown, I don't really do the egg or the hot spot like I did on the blue wing, but you still don't need it super duper tight. Whip finish that. Give it kind of that PMD color, maybe not quite as yellow as you're used to seeing PMDs, more brown. But I'll show you a cool trick with this hackler. Move our light brown thread back to about the hook point. And tie our tails.
If you guys are liking what you're seeing, if you guys wouldn't mind sharing this with your friends, anybody who may be interested, much appreciated. But if you guys got any questions about anything too as we're going, just go ahead and drop them in the comments, and as soon as we see them, we'll try and answer them the best we can.
Like and subscribe.
That too.
Okay, so we got 3. I'm so bad with this camera. 3 moose body hairs for our tails. We're just going to start them where we ended our thread there. Just catch those with a nice tight wrap, and you kind of want to start them closer to you and let your thread tension pull them into place when you make that first wrap. And then you can just take touching wraps. It's also important when I'm tying them in, you can see my fingers here. I grab those tails and I'm grabbing onto the actual hook shank, and that helps keep them where I want. Trim those out. Clean up our butt ends and move back. Same thing, we're going to take our thumbnail, just push those up, and then we can adjust them a little if needed. So that's kind of what we want them to do right there. We got to keep them like that. And like I was saying, you can push them like that at the vise and think, man, that looks cool. But, you know, a couple casts in, they're going to end up looking like one tail. So we're going to start with the one closest to me and just go around it, grab the hook shank, and then you can pull the one further out to help you cheat a little. Catch it, and then go around the hook shank. So then they're going to stay like that for us a little better. Okay. Now we're going to tie in our post. We're going to use some CDC. We use this light done CDC for a post.
Just get close to the hook.
Yeah.
Put it back.
There we go. Ugly Bug. I buy all my stuff from the Ugly Bug. These light dons are pretty cool looking. Just a little different from white. And you don't really have to, but out of habit, I'm going to clean up the bottom of that feather. Get the fluff out of the way. So to tie this in for the post, this feather's pretty well set up because it's got a thin stem, which is kind of what you're looking for. But I'm just gonna make it thin, maybe even get a little moisture on it. So it kind of looks like that. And it'll puff back out and look all pretty for us once it dries out a little bit. So same way we tied in the parapost, we're just going to kind of catch it with the loose wrap where we want. It's a little trickier with the naturals than the synthetics, but that looks about right. We can even adjust before we really crank it down.
We got Diane tuning in here. How are you doing tonight, Diane? Hope you're doing well. And got another question here for Taylor. Could you rib the body with wire?
You could. The only reason I wouldn't probably do that is because it's a dry fly, first of all, and that wire adds a little bit of weight. That wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing for this fly because it already rides pretty low. But I don't know. I just wouldn't because it wouldn't float for as long, really. You know, you could maybe hackle the front a little bit more, but that thread works good. Trying to think, maybe instead of wire, you could use like a slim rib material, something like that. But thread's kind of the way to go just because it'll absorb a little bit of float and then it doesn't weigh your fly down.
Thanks for the question there, Taylor. Any of you guys watching have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. And we'll try and answer them as best we can. And Diane, glad you're doing well.
All right. So that's what we're working with. You can see that CDC is a little buggier than a parapost. So we're going to use a white hackle on this one. I'll show you a little trick after we tie it in. So again, when I tie in my hackle, I pull those little fibers out at the bottom like that, and then I'll trim them. Just like that, so my thread has something to grab into. It leaves those little teeth right there. Tie it in on my side. I'll work my way back a little and add a little dubbing. We'll use some super fine dubbing.
What color is that?
They call it amber. Amber super fine.
So we got another question here from Matthew coming in. I've had great days in March on an orange scud. Will that be the case in April? Probably. So we've got a significant scud population, especially up on the Gray Reef stretch. And scuds fish pretty well up there most of the year. But especially in April and May, an orange scud's kind of pulling double duty. So it looks like a scud, obviously, but it also kind of looks a lot like a trout egg.
Chewed up egg pattern.
Yeah. So you're kind of pulling double duty there. It's a great fly to have in your arsenal this time of year. And thanks for your question there.
So we're just going to palmer this hackle forward like that. And this one is more appropriately sized hackle than our last one because I'm not going to trim the bottom. So that's secure. Now the trick is just pull everything back, even the hackle. Get it right behind that hook eye. That's going to stand your post up a little bit. Then we'll come in and whip finish. You can pull it all back while you whip finish if you need to.
We got my grandma in here too. Hi, Graham.
Hi, Grandma. you're tying along with us. Oh, my parents said they were going to tune in, but I'm sure my dad's watching basketball. In fact, we got to get a game on in here.
Pretty sure there's some copyright issues there.
Okay, so that's kind of our PMD color. That white hackle doesn't show up as good, but cool little trick. If you get a white saddle or just any sort of white hackle, you can kind of cheat and color it a little bit. So I'm just going to get a yellow Sharpie and run it along the sides of this hackle, which some of you might think is awful.
Very good.
But if you just run it through that a little bit, it'll give it that yellow PMD color and almost kind of blend in with the natural colors of the hackle. And that will wash out after you fish it for a while, but it looks pretty cool. So that's our PMD. With the tails, it sits pretty low in the water still, even without cutting that hackle, especially on a little bit heavier wire hook. Yeah, same fly, different mayfly. What do you think? Should we do one more of those? Or?
Yeah, put that one back in the vise there. You want to talk a little bit about why the tails are tied in where they are?
Sure.
Thanks for the love there, Matthew.
So, I kind of tie this fly too right low in the water because everything below the hackle is going to sit, and even this hackle below the hook shank is going to sit low in the water. The tails stick out like that. I don't know. It's kind of just gives it a cool effect on the scud hook.
Kind of flip it from on top either, so you can see how those tails going to come off there.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So, mayflies have those three little tails that stick out of the thorax. Or I guess not the thorax, but their tail. So this is kind of a unique place to have them coming out because it generally be coming out like right down there, right? But because of this, it almost looks like a emerging. Maybe this could be the shuck to the fish, and the mayfly's crawling out up top. Just got his tails coming out. Could be a cripple that failed to emerge, so gets up to the surface and then dies, before it can become a full-grown adult. But really, this thing shines as an adult to fish that are eating adults off the surface of the water. The tails might add a little bit of floating, a little bit of buoyancy to it, but they're more just for that profile. Yeah.
It's a looking bug, man.
Thanks, dude. I'm going to tie one more in a trico color, but I'm going to tie this one hackle stacker style.
Matthew, we're always hiring great guides, and I will attest to the fact that Wyoming's a little better than Colorado. Might be a hot topic, but we're proud of our state up here. But we're always hiring good guides.
Okay. All right, let's do a trico one. And these are all the same hook, size 16. But you can really kind of change the size of the fly depending on where you tie off that hackle and everything. So maybe I'll try and show you that on this one. Just tricos be small.
I haven't heard this song in a hot minute.
Yeah. Who's the best guitarist of all time?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking.
Oh, I don't know. I had a guy bring a guitar in the shop today, and he played a little riff for me. I'm gonna go with
It
him.
might be one. I like Angus Young.
Hendricks, you gotta at
Hendricks.
least acknowledge Hendricks.
Hendricks is in my top 3, and then Eddie Van Halen. Okay, for this one, I won't cut the thread off just because I'm using a single strand of thread, not stuck to anything. It's a unithread and 6/0, a la Pat Dorsey's Top Secret Midge. I will whip finish it since we're live and all. But then I'll just use my rotary feature to rib this thing. Just tie that off. Kind of looks like a little zebra midge right now. But we'll change that. So now we're going to take our tails. I'll actually get my thread in position first. I like to start it at the hook point. If I want it a little bit smaller, I can go a little bit further back. You can see how that thorax gets a little bit smaller. Or I can start back here and leave some more space.
And I heard you mention inspiration from Pat Dorsey there. You want to talk a little bit about how you kind of got into fly tying?
Yeah. It's not a very interesting story, but a buddy of mine, his name's Colby Ward, started fly fishing. We started fishing together, and he got me interested in it, and we both fell in love with it pretty quick. And we thought, man, let's save some money and tie our own flies, right? Like most guys probably think. And
it's the biggest trap in fly fishing.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm glad I fell for it because, I got given advice by a family friend probably 5-6 years ago now. This vise, that's a Renzetti Traveler. And the rest is history. Just became a YouTube warrior, finding guys who I like patterns of, and, it's something I can do every day. I call it my arts and crafts time.
That was my next question. I was about to ask you, do you think fly tying is more about imitation of bugs or forage or whatever they're eating, or would you say it's, for you personally, would you say it's more about the art of it? Or?
Both. At the point where I'm at now that I'm not super sucky anymore, because you'll be pretty sucky if you're just starting for a while. I wish someone would have told me that when I was starting, because it's frustrating. But at the point I'm at now, it's about the art of it, because I can kind of take everything I've learned from awesome tyers, from articles and YouTube, whatever, and make my own thing, try and match the hatch on my rivers. But at the beginning, it was just something that was fun to do. It was challenging, and you can feel yourself getting better at it. So, yeah, a little bit about the art, a little bit of, I don't know, feng shui in there too, something to calm you down.
And we got another question coming in here. Oh, don't have a question. So we got a comment here from Matthew again. Love Wyoming. It's in my top 3 favorite states to trout fish. Hope you guys see me as respectful of your fishery when I'm there. Come May and hope to chat with some of you guys. So we, as Wyomingites, there's nothing wrong with coming up here from Colorado to fish. It's just it's one of those things that I like to give you guys hell about it. But to be honest, when it comes down to the nitty gritty of it, without Colorado, Wyoming would not be what it is. But we love you guys coming up here and experiencing some of our waters. And we go down and fish Colorado all the time too. Goes both ways. But no, we love you guys coming up here. We're pretty fortunate to live here, and every night, at least for me, every night I fish here and go home and sleep in my own bed. I'm thankful for that. But we love all you guys coming out here from Colorado and the other 49 states and anywhere else you guys might be coming from.
Yes, sir. Stay out of my honey holes. Oh, okay. We're tying a hackle stacker. So to do that, I like to use a little bit of usually 6x. I have 5x, which will work just fine. And I'm using the expensive stuff. You don't need to use get you a cheap one that maybe you don't like, and it's 6x.
Got that bougie rib on there.
Yeah, that's all I had. But I'm gonna make a loop with it like that. So take my 2 ends here. I can't get that figured out, can I?
I'm manual.
And then you're just gonna tie those in by the tip, starting at the eye. Again, leaving yourself plenty of room behind the eye to tie this off. That's probably the trickiest part about this fly is you end up crowding the eye on accident every once in a while. Okay, I'm gonna take some black hackle. This would be a good time to use that white hackle though. Maybe I will. Because it kind of shows up almost like an indicator. That white hackle shines on the water a little bit. And this one's got a nice little dark center. All right, same thing. Pull out our fibers like that and then trim them so they have a little bit of teeth. So your thread has something to bite into. Tie that in on my side. And you want to leave your thread hanging back where you tied that in, just so you can tie it back off, because we're going to wrap it up this mono like this and then back down through itself. So that's where you want your thread to be when you get there. You don't want to be fighting to get it back in position once you've done all that work. All right, so now we're just going to start wrapping our hackle up the mono. And the trick is to stick your finger through that loop up top, and then you just hold it up and start making passes around that monofilament.
Just for the record here, Ryder is way better at hackle stackers than I am.
Have you tied one on the live?
No, you guys will never see me tie a hackle stacker on live. Ryder is way better at this than I am.
So you can see what we're doing, and it's a good idea to pull this down and check every once in a while, because that's where we're going to be tying it off. We're going to give it a little mohawk. So I might be able to sneak one more in there. So now at this point, we're going to start heading back down. And just going through itself. You're going to trap a few fibers. You can try and wiggle it a little bit like that while you're going through them, and it'll help. But you can see just how much hackle is going to be on this fly, and it's all going to be on top. So at this point, you can actually let go of your mono, and it's not going anywhere. And you can see why I left that thread where I did. So you can pull this back a little bit so it's out of the way, and then just try and sneak it up underneath of those fibers. So that's one rough tie-in, and then I'll get these out of the way and clean it up a little. So once you have that hackle secure, you can see you have a little hat for your fly to wear.
And real quick here, we got a couple comments coming in. Matthew, we appreciate all you guys coming up here. And no need to row down three holes. At the end of the day, we're all there for the same reason, man. All out there to catch some fish, even if the boat is a little loud. And then the Roundtable Fishing Reports, I believe that is another fly shop here in town that does those. But if you guys are interested in seeing something like that, I can definitely put that together if you guys would be interested in getting fishing reports from some of our guides. And got another question here from Miles. What's keeping the tension on the 6X, or was?
So it was my finger. I take the loop. Let's see if I can show it.
Yeah, let me zoom out a little bit here.
Sure. It might be better.
Yeah. Okay.
So
We can
I
back
take
up
my
this.
pointer finger, put it through that loop to hold it up like this, and then I just have my fingers working around the fly like that, and I just leave my pointer finger.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So it takes a little bit of trial and error with that one. I found this mono is the easiest. I've tried thread, but just to start over, I'll tie in that piece of mono, tie in my hackle, take my right pointer finger, and just hold it straight up. And I mean, there's a pretty wide gap in there, and that's no big deal because it's all getting tied in so low. So then I'll just start making wraps around with my middle finger and thumb on my right hand and my pointer and thumb on my left, like that. I hope that made sense.
I guess I can get back in focus here. We're way out of focus.
That's pretty good.
I think it's about as good as we're gonna get.
Okay, so I just added a little bit of dubbing. It's more that fine natural dubbing from Nature Spirit in their trico color. And again, I barely added any, just dirtying the thread a little bit. So now I'll take my hackle stacker, and you can see through that dubbing. I mean, I didn't put hardly any on there. I almost kind of like how it looks rough like that and how the thread shows through, you know. And then there's less stuff for water to soak into and helps add a little buoyancy. But now I'm going to stroke these fibers back a little bit towards the bend of the hook, towards the tails. And you're not going to get them all, but just kind of coax the ones you can. And then you're going to pull it forward like that. And you're going to get a little mohawk on your fly. And tying this off can be tricky, but I like to just take my left hand and run it up that mono. And that's completely loose, but it's where I want it. And I'll do the same thing. Add a little bit of tension, run it up, and then just let it completely go. And then I can pull tension and let go. And I like to double this mono back over on this, and that's why it's really important to leave a lot of room. And that's just to keep it from ever sliding out. So you can see what we're working with. When you cut this mono out, a little trick is you can start way up here with your scissors and then slide down where you need, and then you'll cut less hackle, if any. And that's pretty much it, except for the whip finish. You can build up a little bit of a head by just sticking your bodkin right up in there. And that's just to avoid trapping fibers of your hackle. And then we'll whip finish. And this is a sweet trico pattern. Our tails got a little wonky. They look pretty good. You can see all that hackle just sits on top of the fly. All of these are going to ride really low in the water, but the kind of lighter colored white hackle just acts kind of as a natural indicator, but it also looks maybe a wing or just buggy. But you can see how there's nothing below the hook shank. Everything's on top. So we just got a little ball of flotation.
Ball of flotation.
Cool.
It's a coin bug.
Awesome. All right, let's change gears. What do you think? Should we tie a hopper or a stonefly? You choose.
What's this? What do you guys want to see here? You guys want to see a hopper or stonefly? Got a couple. Did I just hear a Montucky open? No, not drinking Montucky tonight. Got some Gruner Brothers Petro Club Pilsner. That's what I'm drinking tonight. Local beer from here in Casper. And
I'm drinking Busch Light.
Busch Light. Get some love here. Got Brian Bush tuning in saying, awesome bugs, great background music.
Thanks, Brian.
Looks like 2 for Stonefly, 1 for a hopper. I think Stonefly's going to take it.
Okay. That's fine.
Oh, actually, yeah, no, 2 to 1. We'll go Stonefly first.
Okay, we'll change it to a sinky fly, then we'll go back to a floaty fly. Not to get too scientific, but. So this little stonefly, I won't take credit for this mayfly being my pattern whatsoever. I mean, that's just pure typical kind of cripple. I think I saw the tails like that on Instagram or something, and I don't know. It's kind of a Frankenfly. But this one's also kind of a Frankenfly. I have a bunch of different guys that I like, but I will call it my own. It's a very small stonefly. I like it in a 14. It's got a pretty slim profile compared to a lot of other stoneflies, but it's got a cool CDC collar, which gives it a little bit more life. It also has 2 beads. I generally do it with 2 millimeter tungsten beads. And you can have fun with that, switch up the colors, kind of like Charlie Craven's 2-bit hooker. But we'll do it in the original, tied it as a yellow Sally really to start, but it fishes great as a little winter stone if you do it in black, purple.
That's one of the cooler looking stonefly patterns I've seen.
Yeah, maybe I can show one while I'm getting prepared here.
Sure. Toss it in the waist.
I think it's salmon, yeah. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. There she is. That wing case, stole that from a guy named Casey Dungan. He has some really cool patterns. Just kind of bulges out, almost looks like an emerging wing case, even though it's, not really how stonefly emerges, but they have those big pompous wing cases that stand out. And then you can see there's a second bead hidden in there, so it gives it a little bit more weight. Cool bug.
If you want to leave that there, I'm going to do a little bit of camera adjustment.
Okay, I gotta get my beads and stuff. Kind of a fun thing about doing these 2-bead flies is you can tie different versions to match the water conditions. So you can do 2 tungsten beads for maybe higher water and 2 brass beads if you want it to sit a little bit more centered in the column. Different colors.
And if you guys have any other questions about, even if it's not necessarily fly tying, about, the river here, if you got any questions for Ryder about whatever, I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't got answers.
What questions you want to answer here, but yeah, feel free to ask us almost anything.
Almost anything.
Almost anything. There's a couple questions I know I'm not going to answer.
Okay. So I went ahead and put on 2 millimeter tungsten beads, and it doesn't look right, on that 14. It just looks a little small, but works out great.
I got a question here. I got Matthew asked another one here. Do we have a spot I can car camp with a boat for the next month? If you're looking to camp and fish the North Platte, the Miracle Mile is honestly an awesome place to do that. Especially if if you're prepared for it and you're not running back into town every day. It's incredibly scenic out there. You see elk, bighorns, deer, antelope. Fishing's also pretty damn good. But I'd recommend the mile. But we're pretty fortunate here. We have a lot of public land and a lot of public access, and quite a few campgrounds around as well.
Taking a couple micro. How do you say it?
Micro pivots.
Pivots.
Pivot.
And then just kind of decide how long you want these. They can be as long or as short as you want. I haven't found that really long ones tangle up in your tippet like you might think. So yeah, whatever you like the look of. So I'm just going to start tying these in where I ended my thread. And you can see I kind of angle them down like that. And they're closer to me. And then my thread tension will pull them up to the top of the hook shank after I make a few wraps. And you can play with them a little bit, pull them over here. And then just like the tails on our mayflies last time, I'm just going to take my thumb, push those up. They're kind of stuck together here. Take my wood finish tool and splay them out. There we go. So pull one towards you, one away. And to split them, I'm going to reach around. It might be all fingers and grab the one closer to the camera. Actually, I need to tighten this thread up a little bit, so give it a clockwise spin. So pull that one away around the hook, pull one closer to me. And do the same thing around that side of the hook. And they're going to be pretty off at first. You know what? I didn't like that. There we go. So there's our antenna. That can be kind of tricky with this down eye hook, but I prefer the down eye for this one. So then I'm going to whip finish. And this can be tricky. You want to make sure you don't over bulk up here so you can still slide that bead over, but we should be in good shape. So there we go. There's our first bead. And then our second bead, we don't want to jam it up into that other one. We want to leave a little bit of space, almost just like that, because that's where our soft tackle is going to go with the CDC and our wing case.
Would you say it's about a hook eye between the beads there? Maybe
Yeah,
a little less.
Almost enough to fit a third bead. That's a good way to put it. If you could fit a third bead in there, that's about how much you want. So another thing, use your thread as kind of a tool for measurements. So when I start this, I know I want to leave a little bit of space behind this second bead. just because I'm going to be tying a bunch of stuff off. So I'm almost going to leave enough space for 4 beads in comparison to where I start my thread. Does that make sense? Make touching wraps to about the bend, and then we're going to tie in some biots for our tail. These golden biots, another cool color that I just started doing with this yellow Sally is red. It looks kind of cool too. But we'll stick with the original. Just take 2 biots, rip them right off.
Got another push pop up here. Go ahead and tie your tails and we'll get to that in a second.
Sure. You know, before I prepare my biots, I'm actually going to make a little bit of a bump. Kind of like a copper john. Just something to, same thing I was saying with the tails on our mayfly. Sometimes you tie these biots in and they look great at the vise, and then you get them a swim and they just stick together and don't look like you want them to. So it's a subtle bump, but enough to maybe persuade these to sit how we want. So to prepare the tails, I'm going to rip them off, cut the butts, and then set them so that these 2 ends merge apart, you know, just so that they look like they're splaying out like a natural would. Let's see if I can show you that better. Something like that. It's subtle, but it makes a big difference when tying them in. So I'm going to get these in my hand, kind of get a rough measurement. I don't like them super long on the biots, almost like half a hook shank, just a stub. And this yellow color acts as kind of a hot spot too, because most of the fly is not super flashy. But the tricky thing is lining them up at the right length, like that.
You go ahead and flip your vise so you can see the top of the hook there. And
Yeah,
just split them around.
there we go. Good call.
Get that in focus real quick. That's about as good as I can get right there.
Well, I'll start with them in my right hand. I've got them lined up how I want, right distance, and then I'll set them on the hook shank. Then I'm going to come in. I got to move it. Come in with my left hand and pinch them to the side of the hook shank hard. I mean, I'm grabbing this sucker hard. And then take a loose wrap with my thread and then crank a little bit. Another loose wrap, crank a little harder, and then just start making touching wraps. And the key is don't cheat and let go. I'm still holding that hook shank super hard. And then when I let go, they should sit kind of how I want them. And they're tied in a little bit on top of the shank more than I would like. I prefer them to be on the side of the shank. But I'm not going to mess with them right now.
All right, so we got a comment coming in here from Miles. How long have you dudes guided in Wyoming? Where are y'all from originally? You can go ahead and answer that first.
Sure. God forbid I'm a guide. You know, I've never guided. Closest I've got to guiding is taking some buddies out and getting them drunk on the river. I grew up down by Burns, Wyoming, and got a job up here in Casper, and have fallen in love with the spot. So I've lived here my whole life. Don't plan on leaving.
So I do guide here. I guide for Crazy Rainbow here. I am relatively new, but both of us have spent, a lot of time on the water. Ryder's one of my favorite people to fish with, but yeah, I do guide here. You guys can hire me. Just call Ugly Bug and tell me you want to fish with Justin. But yeah, I'm originally from Michigan. I've been in Casper since 2017. Moved here right after I graduated high school, and just like Ryder, I've been here ever since. And I don't know if I'll ever leave. Casper's a pretty awesome place.
Hey, do you have any black wire?
Yeah, 1 second.
Forgot to pack it.
No worries.
Justin's got to make a material run for me.
What size?
Small.
Small.
Yeah. So for the back, we're using thin skin or whatever kind of material like this you like. I think skinny skin's another good one. I don't know the color of this. I'd call it golden stone if I was naming it myself. But you just want a very, very thin strip that's going to ride along the back of the fly on the body. And then we'll cut a little bit bigger strip about the hook shank for the wing case that we'll tie in later. Thanks, buddy. So first we're going to tie in our ribbing, which I just had hand delivered. Black wire, small, extra small, whatever you got. Any dark wire. I like to use amber wire sometimes. That's a really cool color from UTC. But a key to this is to tie your wire in on the far side, so the side closer to you. And I can explain that better once we start wrapping it forward. But essentially what that does is make it so your first wrap, when you're ribbing the thin skin, won't bundle up your thin skin and make it sit all weird. So tie that wire in right up to our tails. And the body's made of thread, so I keep making trips down and forth just in an effort to build up bulk. So now I'm going to cut some of my thin skin. And I mean, you want it thinner than you think, you know, it's going just across that skinny little back. So you're just looking for a bit of a two-tone effect.
Got you out of focus there.
It's okay.
This camera's not really wanting to cooperate tonight.
So that's our first cut, and you can see that is like super skinny.
So it's about as wide as the bead, maybe?
Yeah. I could show it to the gap for comparison. It's probably like 1/4 the hook gap. So you could probably fit maybe even 4 or 5 of these in there. So we're going to tie it in with the dull side facing towards us. So that way when we pull it back over, we get the shiny side up top. And you could just start this at the back, but like I said, I'm kind of using it to build up a little bit of bulk on my body since I'm using this 8/0. But I do that on purpose because I do want the body relatively skinny. This is kind of designed to be a quick sinker. So then we're going to take our thin skin and run it up the back there. You can see how that kind of gives a cool two-tone effect with that light brown color. Catch it with 2 wraps, and then I like to double the thin skin over just to secure it in. Trim that out. Now I can show you what I meant with the ribbing. So since it's on that far side, I can make my first wrap under and not touch any sort of thin skin. And then I can really dictate where that first wrap lays, and I can grab that thin skin. And then I've got extra small, so I'm going to take a few extra wire wraps than I generally would. And you can kind of mess with that thin skin on top. It's actually cooperating. And now you can see why I left myself like an extra bead to tie all this junk off, because if I didn't, I'd run the risk of crowding these right here, and then I wouldn't have any room to tie in my soft hackle. Break off my wire.
You want to talk a little bit about why you tightened all the way up to the hook shank there?
Yeah. Sometimes when I'm breaking that wire off, it'll have a tendency to like slip out of my thread, especially in those smaller sizes. So I'll just kind of jam my bobkin right up into the bead like that. And that way I know my thread's really cranking down on it, and then I can twist my wire off and know that it's never losing tension. If I just let this sit there like that, it might pop out, you know. Probably unnecessary, but just a extra precaution. It's something that I do without thinking about these days. So we're gonna take some more of that amber superfine, the same stuff we used on our PMD dry fly. And again, like none. Can barely see it on this sweet camera. Like that's plenty. And we'll just hide some of these tie off points. Like that. And then we'll jam this bead up into those, and we'll just take our thread, let's see if I can show it, over the top of the bead and catch it in between. You can kind of adjust that a little bit. Use your thread to build up a little bit of a base. You can see that's about perfect, how much space we want to tie in this little soft hackle in our wing case. So you can see how this thing would be built to sink. There's nothing going on. And then the CDC is really what kind of makes it so buggy. So we're going to start by making a dubbing loop. And this will be good to show you that you don't need a super fancy tool or anything crazy for a dubbing loop. This is what I use. I've always used. It's just a hook, just a simple Tiemco hook. And what I'll do is just take my thread around that, double it over, take 2 wraps on the hook shank, and then I'll feed it underneath of that thread twice. So you can see that. And then I'll pull up, and we've got a small little dubbing loop. And I'll set it over here while I prep my feathers. I've tried all sorts of different ways to soft hackle these CDCs. It's kind of a pain sometimes, but the easiest way I found is to find 2 regular, similarly sized feathers and just set them on top of each other like this. And these aren't a good example because they're not about the same size, but if you just set them on top, you can come in and clamp them. I'll get a better feather. How many people we got?
So, as you're getting that prep there, do you remember the first fly you tied?
Yeah. It was, what's it called? Like one of the hardest flies. I still can't tie it. I tried to tie this thing. It's kind of looks like an Adams, but it's got elk hair for the body. What's that called? An irresistible or something?
Oh, yeah, Adams irresistible.
Yeah,
spun deer hair. It's all close.
Yeah, it's like spun deer hair on the body, and yeah, I thought it looked cool, so I thought I'd give it a shot, and I'm lucky to be tying to this day because that thing kicked my butt.
It's quite the doozy for the first one.
I know, I didn't know what I was getting into. But yeah, that was my first one. I still have it at my fly tying bench. It never quite made the cut to get tied onto it, the end of a tippet. But one thing I would say is don't be scared to try stuff that's really tough when you're starting out, though, because all it takes is learning a couple steps, and those ones that are super tough become your favorite one to tie.
Ain't quite as much fun if it doesn't have the challenge to it.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to learn the foundational piece of tying a zebra midge or a rockworm, and there's definitely a place to be had for those, but don't be scared to try hard stuff. So we're going to take a rusty brown CDC feather and a PMD colored CDC feather, just set them over the top, and you can see how those make kind of this cool color. And then,
Almost Wyoming colors.
yeah, almost brown and gold. Then we're going to take our little clamp thing. I'm a sucker and got one of these sweet CDC clamps, but it's actually pretty awesome.
Those Swiss CDC clamps are.
Yeah.
They're wicked cool.
Yep. They definitely make this type of fly a lot easier. So we're just going to clamp them in there like that. And we're not worried about the length of those fibers at all. We'll actually trim them off once they're tied in. So cut those off of the base of their feathers. And then they're ready to get put into our dubbing loop. So I'm just going to open up the loop like this with my finger. Stick the tip of this in there. And grab them by their butt ends. So you're left with something like that. And then I just put my finger on it and give it hard tension right here. And I'll start twisting. And I almost don't want the fibers to twist up until I have a good amount of twists in there. And then I'll just let it go. And I'll grab all those fibers at once so they don't go shooting out. See if I can somehow show you. See that? That looks pretty cool in the camera.
Yeah, it does.
So get a good twist in there. Not enough that you're going to break that thin 8/0 thread, but enough that these fibers aren't going anywhere. And you can tease them out with your fingers a little bit if you want, or a brush, but they're pretty well buggy. So we'll start up like this, wet our fingers a little, stroke them back just a little bit, and then we'll just wrap. And take a couple tight wraps to this back bead so that they flare out a little bit. That'll help keep them moving and buggy once they're underwater if they're tight to that second bead. And don't worry about trapping fibers. The CDC is fun because it just is unruly. That's kind of what it's supposed to do. That's why we like it. So that's what it looks like.
Arguably nothing buggier.
Yeah. And it'll be fighting the weight of this tungsten bead the whole time. It'll just kind of make it come to life. So we're just going to take a couple wraps over our dubbing loop there. And you can see that second bead is almost disappeared.
So I don't know if y'all watching this know this, but CDC is it's French for cul de canard, which is literally means duck's butt. So these feathers come from the preen gland of a duck, and a duck will take its bill and it'll rub its bill all in these CDC feathers, and then it'll take that oil and it'll spray it through its feathers so it is hydrophobic and it'll float. But coincidentally, that same oil that they use to keep themselves afloat also is awesome for fly tying and fly fishing because it's extremely hydrophobic and it's built into the feather. But even on nymphs, that the oil that's on CDC, it kind of creates like a silvery, almost gas bubble over each of those fibers, and it's just incredibly buggy.
It's great for dry flies because, like Justin said, it's so floaty. There's a lot of great patterns. In fact, Egan's corn-fed caddis or corn-fed Sally are some of my favorites for summertime fishing, and those are pretty much straight CDC. Check those out. Okay, so we tied off our dubbing loop. Now we're ready for the wing case, which is the same thin skin. And this is a little bit thicker, and this is kind of the make or break of the fly, really. If you tie it too thick, it kind of hangs over the sides and doesn't look good. If you tie it too skinny, it doesn't really give you that effect that you want. So really the best way is to find the size that you like the look of and try and cut a bunch in that same size depending on what size fly you're tying, just so you don't have to keep playing guessing games. It gives you a little bit more consistency. But generally, it's about the hook gap, maybe a little less. I should have prepped some materials, but we'll wing it. We'll do it live.
So I've got a good question for you here. So a question I like to ask people, and I don't know if I've ever actually asked you this question, but one of my favorite questions to ask people is, so you've caught a lot of fish. I've witnessed you catch a lot of fish. Through your fishing career, what is the coolest fish you witnessed caught? Maybe you caught it, maybe somebody else caught it, but the coolest fish you witnessed, either caught, lost, most memorable fish.
I think the first one that pops up is my grandpa came with me. We actually were fishing down in Colorado on a pretty popular tailwater, and he lives down in Texas, so I don't get to see him all that often, you know. And I go to the house where they're staying. I come in, and he has himself rigged up with a Orvis Clearwater setup, ready to rock 5-weight, or maybe it was a 6-weight, but had the reel and everything. I was thinking, I had no idea. I brought all my extra rods and stuff, but he didn't want to borrow my stuff. He wanted to use his own. So we went out and we caught some fish on tailwater, and he doesn't trout fish all that often or get the chance to, being around the Dallas area. So that's a really awesome memory. Man, I don't know. Some of the first fish I caught back before I knew that a 12-inch stocky wasn't like the coolest fish ever. You know, I miss those days. My buddies and I will talk about that, missing getting excited over little beaver pond brook trouts. And it's not that I don't anymore, but I don't know. I tell everybody starting to enjoy those moments and that feeling of like conquering the world when you catch your first 16-inch brookie or something, because, you know, you never lose it, but you just try to move bigger and better, right? But sometimes it's not really about the bigger, it's just about the pursuit.
So spending as much time here at the fly shop as I do, pretty fortunate to, you know, encounter a lot of people that are just getting into the sport. But personally, I think it'd be cool to go back to, you know, just starting out, because everything's new and it's exciting.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know if it's the same for you, but you know, living and working in a place like Casper, Wyoming, it's easy to get jaded to it, but you just can't take those things for granted.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a good point. When I was living down in Burns, Wyoming, not known for its trout fishing, I, you know, really cherished any opportunity I got onto the water, even those days where you get skunked, and I still do. But you move to a place like Casper, or just any place that has a great watershed available, and you're right, it is easy to start taking it for granted. But yeah, keep that feeling of excitement.
Real quick before you tell it, you kind of explain how you cut that.
Yeah, definitely.
What
I got
kind
in
of
the
shape
zone.
you're looking for.
So I just cut a little notch in it, and this is a different style because it's just going to hang off the back of the fly like this. We're just literally tying it in like that, and it's just going to sit on the back there. So you cut those notches in it, it looks kind of cool. You don't really have to, but yeah, kind of gives it that classic stonefly wing case look. But we'll just tie this in about, we'll say there's 3 beads on the fly. We want to tie it in where that 3rd bead would be, even though there's only 2. So give yourself about an extra bead length, something like that. A little farther than you would think so, not right at the end of that 2nd bead like that. More like right there.
It's like the notch ending about where your dubbing is.
Yeah, you want your notch to almost go where your dubbing's at. Yep. And you can see I haven't trimmed that CDC yet. It looks like a mess, but we'll go in and trim that once we're done with the wing case.
And we got a comment going in here from Brian. Still waiting for my first trout. Maybe my next trip up. Well, Brian, if you're looking to catch some trout, I know a pretty great guide service by the name of Crazy Rainbow. We'd love to take you guys out. We do a lot of beginner trips and a lot of kind of introduction to fly fishing kind of deals. But if you're interested, go ahead and give us a call down here, and we'd love to get you out. But if you're interested in trying it on your own, go ahead and stop in here, and we can give you some access points and help you get some bugs picked out. Set you up for success. And thanks for your comment. And if any of you guys watching have any other questions or anything, go ahead and drop them in the comments. Got some love coming from Diane here.
I'm just going to sneak a couple wraps underneath of the thin skin, secure it. And then when I trim it, I start at one edge and just make as many cuts as I need till I get to the other edge.
Kind of following the contour.
Exactly. Follow the bead. You can pull on it a little bit, but we're going to hide it with a little bit of dubbing. So, not a big deal. Okay, at this stage, I like to add some resin to that wing case. And maybe I'll go ahead and trim those CDC while we're at this part too. So CDC, the cool thing is I don't care if I come in here and cut it with scissors. It looks the same. But a cool technique is to just push it all back, lift it all up a little bit. And then you can just take your fingers in here and rip those out. Keeps them a little bit more, less uniform.
And what kind of length are you looking for on that CBC?
You know, you want a variety. So you want your longest fibers to go to the tail, but you don't want any that are like sticking barely out of here. You just kind of want them to run along the side of the body, almost like legs that are getting pushed around in the current. So once you kind of get that general length, and that's about as long as I would want them, you can come in here from the back with your scissors, and you just kind of randomly stick the tip of your scissors in there and start trimming. Don't cut your tails or antennas or anything like that. So that'll just kind of help give it that crazy look. Not so robotic. Then we're going to take some Solar Res. I think this is the thick hard. And we're just going to put a little bit of that on the wing case before we add our dubbing and whip finish. We're pretty much done. Shoot. There's no toothpicks in here, is there? Something like it. I can use this. We're good.
That's what say break a piece of wire off. Use this vodka.
So my resin probably looks like your resin. It was a mess. So I'm just going to pull some out of this side pocket here. And this is a good way to screw up perfectly tied fly with your resin. Just go a little bit at a time. Don't rush it, because it can make a fly look super duper cool or kind of jack it up. Prepare a little bit of resin here. So we're just going to take some and run it up the wing case, up those notches we cut in. And that's just going to add even more of that kind of bulbous thorax on a stonefly nymph. Resin's pretty cool. Adds a little bit of translucency, durability. And Solar Res has become my favorite. So you can see I'm just starting with a pretty healthy clump of it. Actually. And then I'll start at the front and just kind of work it back. Just try and cover all that surface area of the thin skin. Give a little bit more. A lot, a bit more.
I got some doors in here too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah, we got quite the variety on our tunage tonight. How about Ohio State losing today? Dang. Had them in the Final Four. This is March. Okay, so that's a resin. I should have had my light ready to rock. We'll take a light, dry that up. You can see that stonefly profile in those fibers when they're wet. They'll suck down a little bit to the fly, but they'll also dance and give it a little bit of movement.
Kind of breathe.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They'll make it breathe a little bit.
Got another question coming in here from Miles. Is there anything else you've tried for legs besides CDC or rubber legs in general that you suggest? Granted, the setup might be different.
Any sort of hackle's pretty awesome. Partridge can be sweet legs. And you can put that in a dubbing loop the same way we just did with the CDC, or just wrap it on by the stem. Partridge is probably my favorite bird for legs, but you can use hen saddles. Gosh, there's so many different hackles these days that I can't keep up. But those are probably my favorite: partridge, CDC, and hen capes.
And then we got, I'm not sure how to say your name here. Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm not even going to try. I don't want to mess your name up. He said, there goes that bracket for you.
Yeah, bracket busted. Like big time. So then we just added a little bit more superfine dubbing. Again, hardly any. And that's just to cover up where we tied in that wing case. Now we're ready to whip finish. You know, something I should talk about is on your whip finish. It's important that you whip finish towards the eye of the hook. You don't just throw a bunch in there like that. If you whip finish and actually move that way towards the eye, you're actually capturing your thread. And there's almost no need for glue if you're sure to do it like that. Cool trick I recently learned. But that's our fly. You can see it has that big thorax, a bunch of CDC sticking back. It's a pretty thin profile, but it'll be a sinker with those two beads. Cool. Haven't named it yet. We've got some ideas in the works. Well, that took longer than I thought. Should we jump right into a hopper?
Yeah.
I like this little stone in this yellow Sally color. Black and purple's cool. You could do like a dark green and black for like a squala type thing, or pretty much whatever you want. It's pretty good, imitative, but it's also kind of a attractor with all that stuff going on. Cool. Now I'll tie a hopper. Put one in the vise real quick. That's why you're here, right? For that hopper Justin was posting pictures of.
That's a sweet hopper, man.
So I just gotta get this out early. This is in no way my fly. I stole this from a guy named Tim Sickles. He's over in Utah. No, where is he? Oregon. And he is just an absolutely wicked fly tyer. He has a fly called the Foam is Home Stone, which is pretty much this fly with a few different changes. And since I'm fishing hoppers a lot more than stone flies, I had to kind of make it my own in a hopper version. The only real difference is I've added in some flash in the wing, removed some hair on the wing, tying the indicator a little bit different, and just trying to make a little bit bulkier thorax area like a hopper. And I give it a smiley face. But let me get some stuff together and we'll just tie one. It's tied. This is my favorite one for it right now. I'm all about these Komodos. K2312 and the number 8 Komodo. Great hopper hook. I'll leave it in there for a second.
I don't know if I've ever seen you tie one of these, actually.
Let's change that. Let's see if I remember how to tie one.
So I've got another question for you here. So everybody kind of has their preferred technique of fly fishing. Some people like to throw streamers. Some people like to dry fly fish. Some people like throwing terrestrials, Euro nymphing, you name it. And granted, this is a loaded question, but if you had to pick one method of fishing, fly fishing, for the rest of your life, what do you think you'd pick? Your favorite?
My favorite, or see, I'm coming at it from like a very selfish standpoint where, dry fly eats are pretty awesome, but I'm not going to get to do that in March, right? Nymphing catches a lot of fish, but come on now, do we really want to nymph only the rest of my life? So when I think about the question originally, I'd probably go streamer fishing just because I can do it anywhere, any time of year. But as far as favorite goes, I can't beat watching a fish eat something like this off the top of the water. We have a great fishery for hoppers here on the North Platte, so I get to do it the most. And just to tie something like this and watch a big trout come smash, it's pretty cool. So I guess I didn't really answer your question, but
close enough.
Yeah. So this one uses 1 millimeter foam and 2 millimeter foam.
We got a quick question coming in here. What size hook are you tying this on?
This is a number 8 Komodo 2312 hopper hook. And 8's probably my favorite. You could go bigger though, or small. Oh, I gotta get my thread here. Bear with me.
Always getting the thread set up there. Where are you guys all tuned in from? We've had some people from all over, but it's always interesting to see where you guys are watching us from. We're here in Casper, Wyoming, but there's some of you guys for sure aren't here in Casper, but all over the world. We'd love to know where you guys are at. Got another question coming in here. What species can we capture? What do you like to target with that bug?
Oh, with this hopper, almost exclusively trout. That's all I've ever fished for with this pattern, really. I don't know, anything that eats hoppers you can catch on this bad boy.
Got Brian tuned in from Gunnison.
Gunnison. I haven't fished down there, have you?
I've not made it down to Gunnison yet.
That's pretty good.
Got Brent from Indiana. Gunner from Sheridan. And another Brian here from New Orleans.
Brian. Hey, buddy.
It's March, isn't that when Mardi Gras is?
I don't think so, but it might be. I don't know.
Brian, I'm going to need you to weigh on this. When is Mardi Gras? We got Miles tuning in from, I believe, Taos. That's how you'd say that, New Mexico. Gets to spend his summers guiding up in Alaska. That is awesome.
Lucky.
Got C tuning in from Kansas City, Missouri.
I am just prepping some materials here. So I've cut a piece of this 1mm craft foam, a little bit less than the hook gap, about the hook gap. And that's what's going to be our body that gets wrapped around this hook shank. So I'm going to cut a little end like that to tie it in. Start my thread, right at about, right behind the barb. About there. Tie in this 1mm foam. And then, like I said, this is all Tim Sickles. If you guys are tyers, check him out on Instagram. He's big inspiration for me. That's probably where I learned this tail technique on our mayfly earlier, but very inspirational tyer. Ties some wicked stuff.
All right, so it's sort of right. I got Brian tuning in here. Mardi Gras was February 16th this year. Next year will be March 1st. So it's sort of right.
My bad. You're right. Anyway, you can take 2 strips of foam. This is actually one that I've cut in half. But, cut them pretty square. They don't need to be huge. Something like that. And we're actually going to tie these in along the side of the fly. And it's going to give it more of that kind of bulky hopper look that we're looking for once we wrap this foam around. And I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to catch this first one like this.
Just a heads up to you guys here. I think we're getting close to the end of this battery on this camera, but I've got another one ready here. We might be shut down here for a minute while I switch batteries, but we'll be back quickly.
Do you want to do that real quick before I get going?
We'll roll with it. I think we got a little bit of time left.
Sure. But that's what we're looking for. Tie them in on the side. And then secure it. Sneak our thread up here a little bit.
So as you're tying that in there, is that going to give this any segmentation, or is that all going to come from the piece of razor foam?
It's all going to come from the razor foam. This is more just to expand the fly out that way instead of so much just a big round. It's going to give it kind of a flat look. And that was more, I think, for a stonefly effect. But I think it gives even the hopper maybe a little bit more flotation and just a little bit bulkier.
Looks nice and juicy.
Exactly.
And, thanks for tagging your buddy there, Miles. The rest of you guys, if you know anybody that's interested in fly tying or art in general, honestly, go ahead and tag them in this. Share it if you would. It's awesome to have you guys watching. Appreciate it.
So I'm not a huge fan of using a bunch of glue on flies, but this is a good part to put some glue on here. And before I do that, I'm actually going to take a Sharpie and add some segmentation to this. So once I wrap it forward, I'm going to get that natural segmentation in my wraps. So just to make sure you're doing it in the right spot, it's always a good idea to check. You want it to be on the part that's facing back. So right here. And I kind of like to try and just run it up the corner more so than on the whole thing, if that makes sense, kind of like that. So it's not as big of a brown line. Put a little glue
What kind of glue are you using there?
Zappy Gap. Yeah. Any old glue will work great on both sides. And improvise here. That'll also kind of hold that stuff in position so it doesn't end up rotating on you underneath. It shouldn't if you tie it in nice and tight, but this glue will help keep the fish from ripping your fly up easily. So now we're ready to wrap this 1 mil piece of foam. So we're going to take one really tight wrap and try not to break it, of course, but then 2 really tight wraps. And then we can just start wrapping our way up here. You can see how that gives that cool hopper body. We can tie that off. And I tie it off with a bunch, of foam under there. Don't be worried about that. Just get it secure. Get rid of that. Easy squeezy so far. Now we're ready for our wing. So I'm actually going to go back another millimeter. Something like that's what you want it to look like. All right. For the wing, I love these EP trigger point fibers. They come in a package like that. They are just awesome to work with. They tie in better than the classic post material, and they have a ton of cool colors. And they're treated to float, so they give you a little bit of buoyancy. For this one, I'm going to take this PMD color and mix it with this blue wing color. Just mix them together. Gives it a cool wing. And when you mix them like that, obviously you only need about half as much from each as you generally use. So we're going to double it over. So something like this.
Maybe a hook, like about half a hook gap or so.
Yeah, like what do people say with hair? Like a pencil width. This would be a little less than a pencil width, probably.
Hold tight. Yeah.
That's all by feel, because you could do it as much as you want. If you want it to be super duper floaty, you may put a little more, but we're just trying to make it look like a real wing. Not that hoppers have the most predominant wings, but for the length on this, we don't really worry about it right now, but it's going to sit just at about the body. So I'm going to come in 1 turn, 2 turns, pull all these back, and catch it right there. So that's what it looks like, kind of split wing almost. And then a cool technique I've been doing is putting in this flash, which is more traditionally for streamers, but it works great on these hoppers too. It's ripple ice fibers. There it is. So I'll just take some of these UV pearl ripple ice fibers and add them into the wing. Sometimes I'll use gold, or there's all sorts of colors, but this pearl is my favorite. Not very many, like 3 or 4, something like that. You can see that stuff's pretty cool. And I think it's not only for the fish, but it almost acts as a little bit of an indicator for you. It kind of shines, lights up on the water. But same thing, gonna set it on top of that flash, catch it with a wrap, 2 wraps, work it back, tie it in kind of split wing like that.
I got another question coming in here from Brian. The wings just naturally, I think you meant to say splay there, no crisscross?
Nope. Yeah, and generally it's going to sit like that. It's not really going to get that split wing effect, especially once we tie in all this stuff up here. It's going to lay them even flatter. But that's just an easy way to get those wings in there secure. And I am going to put a little bit of glue right on that tie-in point, just so that there's no chance for these slippery fibers to come out. But the less glue, the better on your flies, I would always say. Don't become too reliant on gluing stuff.
Gluing doesn't replace proper fly tying technique,
Absolutely.
but it definitely helps sometimes.
Yeah, glue definitely has its place.
And Diane's taking off. Thanks for watching, Diane. Always appreciate you watching. Appreciate all the love you give us here. But you have a good night, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Diane. All right. So that is everything for the back portion of the fly. Now we can start tying in our thorax area. For the antennas, I like to use this Life Flex or Flexi Floss, whatever it's called, as opposed to round rubber for the antennas. It just kind of gives it that more antenna thinner look than a leg. So I'm just going to snip these off, wrap them into a loop like this, and tie them in by their tips. So let me get my thread out of this. And this whole time, you can see we've got a pretty wonky area right here. While I'm tying stuff in, I'm just going to be filling this up so that by the time everything's tied in, we'll be almost at a level part on the front of our fly. Because right now we still have bare hook up by the eye. So we'll start our tie-in right where things are a little goofy. Something like that. And then we'll just pull those tight with every wrap, and that helps keep them on top.
Got a YouTube comment coming in. The technique of coloring the side of the foam is very interesting. That's actually, I never would have thought to do that.
With the Sharpie?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is all Tim Sickles, that guy. I haven't had an original idea in my fly tying career. He is just wicked. You should check out some of his stone flies. He'll take root beer for like a salmon fly, root beer colored foam, and that orange on the root beer just makes such a natural look. It's wicked. Another cool thing you can do, I'll show you real quick, is with this Sexy Floss especially, you can bar it yourself. So now that that's tied in, I'll just pull these tight and take a black Sharpie and just run those along the sides. Even if I only do it on the top, it'll spin it and add a very cool barring. Instead of paying a little extra for barring, you can do it yourself. It just doesn't last quite as long. But you can see how that adds a cool barring effect on your antennas. Okay. Now we're going to take our 2mm tan foam, and you want this one to be about the hook gap, maybe even a little bit bigger, because we're going to tie one in on top, one in on the bottom, and then fold them back like a sandwich and tie them in. So you're going to get that effect of it kind of sinking into each other. I'll show you what I mean.
It's amazing how that little strip of brown, though, just defines that segmentation as much as it does.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, I've come to just do it on the tip of that foam instead of the whole thing, because it's a little more subtle. Like this one, I did the whole thing. Maybe you can see the difference. It's subtle, but gives it a cool effect. So I've cut my piece of foam. You can see it's a little bit bigger than the hook gap. I'll fold it in half and give myself 2 even pieces. And then I'll even tie or cut in a little point here. to make it easier to tie in. Something like that. But I'll tie in my top one first, and I'll just set it on top of the hook shank like this. And like I said, I'm trying to build in this spot so we don't have this big gnarly bump. But catch it once, catch it twice, and then I'll just start working my way towards the hook eye. You can see I'm using my left hand to kind of stabilize that foam. Check where I'm at. And you want this flush to the hook eye. We're not going to whip finish behind the hook eye. We want it as close as we can, really. The last drop was too close. There we go. Now we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. So what we're going to do is pull this back, and that's where our head's going to come from. Flip it over. Great. We got our top and our bottom piece of foam in there now. So now we're going to start the head of the fly. So you want it, about at the 1/3 point of this bare space. And you can take one that you've tied that you like the look of and kind of gauge how you want it. You can make it bigger, smaller. But I like to start with the bottom side. So I'm going to take it, kind of roll it around the sides there just so it will get sucked up underneath of the top one. Make a turn like that. One loose one, a couple tighter ones. You don't want to cut your foam. Then we'll do the same thing up top.
So you're tying that top piece in there. We got a comment coming in from Brazil.
Brazil.
Would it be possible to send material for fly tying to Brazil? So we do some international shipping on fly tying materials. Might be a little bit extra for shipping to Brazil. But yeah, we could definitely try and get you helped out there. But you can communicate with us through email or through social media. But for you guys out of the United States, if you're interested in contacting us about getting fly tying material or gear or anything, info@crazyrainbow.net, and I'll actually drop that in the comments here. You guys can always reach us by email there, and we'll do our best to hook you guys up with whatever you're looking for, no matter where you are.
Well, as you can see, we've got our head tied in. Now we're going to go ahead and put in our first set of legs. This is probably the trickiest part of the fly, at least it was for me, because we're tying in these knotted legs, and they can just be tricky. They want to run around on you. Anybody that's tried knotted legs knows that they can be kind of a pain in the butt. But they're worth it in the end because they look pretty dang cool. One of the tricks is to start with way more rubber leg than you need. It's a little bit wasteful on the material, but it's definitely worth it. Just do an overhand knot. Tie your knot. And it doesn't really matter on these front ones, but tie it in, give it a nice tug, and it shouldn't go anywhere. Knotted leg will be my other one. And that's really the trick, I think, is just giving this hard tug. So we want them to kind of sit down, stick down like that, stick out in the front, and then we want that joint to go down into the water. So using your thread tension to put these where you want is really the whole trick. So measure out where you want your joint. I want it just a little bit further than the hook eye. I come in and catch it. One, two, and it's not awful, but you can adjust it from here and just roll it around. And I kind of like that. But if I want it to go a different way, I can just roll it in my fingers. Kind of move it up and down on the fly. And you just kind of put a little twist into it, and then you can roll it. That's where I want it, right about there. Great. Take our other one, do the same exact thing on the near side. And you can get as picky as you want. I don't think it really matters so much, but figure out what you like the look of and try and do that. Okay, so there's our front legs. I will trim these up just a hair so they're out of the way. So to hide this tie-in point, we're actually going to stick these legs underneath of this foam. So we're going to work this back. Sneak our thread in between that gap. It's hard to see, but we just snuck it in between that gap right there. And then we're going to tie in our legs inside, just so they're hidden, and durability, for durability's sake.
Got another question coming in here. Do you find this is as effective as a chubby?
I can honestly say I've never fished a chubby. I know that sounds crazy, but I don't know. Chubbies are great because they're easy to tie and they're kind of generally, they imitate whatever. It could be a stonefly or a hopper, depending on the size of beetle. This one, when I'm fishing this one, I'm trying to get that big hopper eat, or I know there's hoppers on the water just because it does a good job of imitating that profile of a hopper. But yeah, I don't know. Probably not.
I, on the other hand, I've fished a lot of chubbies, and to be honest, most of the time in streamer fishing and most fly fishing, honestly, the fly that you're most confident in, it's going to be what you're going to fish the best. It's just how it is. And I don't think I could possibly fish this fly without confidence. As a good-looking hopper, it's got the exact profile. But having confidence in your bug is by far the most crucial point.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't believe that fly's going to catch a fish, it's probably not going to catch a fish.
So we're just building up this thorax, doing the same thing we did with the head. It's a little bit bigger than our head, that thoracic segment of the hopper. I just talked out of my butt. I don't know if that's what it's called. But
the middle-ish one.
Yeah, the middle bump of the hopper. There we go. So that's kind of what we're looking for. Sandwich those together. At this point, if we're confident that that's tied in good, which I am, we can trim off this bottom portion. And we just want to do that by making one clean cut, and then we'll clean up the edges just like this. Get a hold of it. Don't pull it too awful tight, but, cut it like that, and then we'll just cut off these little side edges here. So there's the bottom of our bug.
I'll get another question come in here. Stonefly is perfect. Congratulations. It's a very interesting pattern. Can I replicate it?
No way. Don't even think about it. Of course you can. Please do it and let the ugly bug guys know how it fishes if you have any luck with it.
Yeah.
I'd love that.
If y'all tie up some of these bugs, tag us in it, tag Ryder in it. We love seeing some of the creations that some other people come up with, and kind of the beauty of fly tying is you're able to put your own spin on pretty much anything.
Heck yeah. Okay. At this point, I like to tie in my indicator before my last set of legs. So for the tan one, I like to use orange. For green, I'll use kind of a fluorescent yellow. Pink, I'll use orange. Whatever you like, whatever you can see the best. I mean, it doesn't really matter what it looks like off the vise. It matters that you can see it when you're fishing. But we're just going to take a piece of 2mm orange and make a run up to the front here where we tied in those first legs.
You would flip and show the top as
Yep.
you came across the foam there.
So we're going to come across like that. And we want to do it with as few wraps as we can. That way we don't screw up our legs that we worked so hard to get looking good. So that's literally 2 wraps. And I'm going to go out of here at this point. And then I'll use my rotary feature to make sure I am where I need to be. And again, that is 2 wraps for the indicator. And that thing's not going anywhere once it's in there. So that's what we're working with. You can make that the whole width of the top too if you want. You can play with it. Usually I can see this big bug okay. All right, now for the back legs, we're going to knot some more of this. I think this is natural, is what they call this color. But it's kind of just this clear, barred black and tan. It's pretty cool. Same thing we did with the front legs. Overhand knot them. Give them a good tug. And then for these, I like them to stick down like that and not out or in too much. You just kind of want them to sit straight down, almost at the end of the body, like right there, maybe even a little bit past the end of the body. But for this one, I'm going to kind of lean it out like that since my thread is going to want to push it into me. See that? And that needs a little adjusting, but I think you got the idea. So that's it. That's the money leg right there. Something like that. We don't want it sticking out too far away from the back, but you also get the effect that there is a leg there. All right, I'm gonna knot my last one.
Got another comment coming in here from Miles. Just timed out. What's the purpose in tying the little yellow foam strip on top? Is it for balance or to keep the hopper upright?
That's more just for me to see the fly. This fly rides pretty low in the water, really. I mean, even though there's all that foam on it, it sits pretty low. So just having a little bit of an indicator can be helpful, especially when you're wade fishing and you're almost at water level, eye level. Just gives you an advantage. Something I should mention is trying to keep your thread wraps inside of that spot right there. You don't want it coming over here or doing anything funky. Your thread will actually kind of create a barring effect underneath of the bug, the same way that your marker does on the body. So at this point, we're pretty much done. We just are going to whip finish at this back junction here where our thread's hanging right now. and then we'll do some trimming and call it good. I'll show you some tricks with the marker to make this thing really come to life. And a little trick I like to do whip finishing is kind of turn my bug sideways like that, and then I can peek underneath and make sure that my whip is going under there like I want it to, right? I'll adjust my leg just a touch. That's the thing about these legs, is even after you whip finish the fly, they might get a little wonky while you're fishing, but you can put a little glue on at this point and keep that from happening. That looks pretty good. Cool. Cut that. Trim our antennas. Do some leg snips. This is all personal preference. If you want them really long and a lot of movement, leave them long. If you like them a little bit shorter, which I kind of do, try to add up to the proportions of an actual hopper. Another cool thing, if you cut your round rubber at an angle like that, you can get this kind of pointed, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but kind of a pointy end to it. Almost tapers down your round rubber. But that is the fly. Like I said, it's Tim Sickles' stone. Home is foam stone, but kind of in a hoppery version with a few changes. And on this one, I do like to cut the antenna pretty short because they will kind of jack with your leader, that rubber antenna. But that's the fly. Cool way to doll it up is take your Sharpies. You can run, well, we'll do yellow. Take your yellow Sharpie and just kind of run it straight down the center of the bug. Let's see if I can do it so you can see. Just like that. So you got a big line of yellow. Then you can take a piece of scrap foam, just kind of mix it in there.
When you go to show the bottom again, hold your hand above the bug. Block the light a little bit. There you go.
So you see how that made it yellow? Now you got like a perfect two-tone effect on the top versus the bottom. And then you can come in with brown and give it that cool segmentation or little markings that you see on hoppers sometimes. Give it just a couple little flares on it, something down the side maybe. And then on this one, I like to give them a little smiley face. Why not? Put some eyes. I just push that Sharpie right into the side of the foam there. Give it an eyeball.
Now we can see where he's going.
Yeah. Flies with eyes fish better than flies without eyes. It's a fact. And that's it.
Put your hand above it real quick. Yeah, there you go.
Guess you could call it the foam is home hopper.
I think the smiley face makes it.
Yeah, it makes it. That's what catches the fish. I would say on this one, I got in a little bit of a hurry. This leg on the bottom sticks out a little farther than I would normally like. I kind of like that top leg better. But I could adjust that right now, really, if I wanted to. But that's the bug. It's great to hang a dropper underneath or just hammer the banks from a boat. But I think that's going to be our last one.
Yeah, thank you all for watching. Ryder, thank you very much for coming on tonight. Hopefully in the future here we'll have some more guest stars, but Ryder, he's spends a lot.
Is that our camera?
That was the camera.
Can I still hear us?
No, I don't think so. If you guys are able to hear me, why don't you guys drop a comment in there? I think I don't. Oh wait, I'm just gonna go ahead and switch that battery real quick. Well, damn, that was like 1 minute too short.
Good
battery.
timing, Good timing. Oh, that was fun. I felt like I talked a lot.
All right, so you guys can still hear us. All right, so thank you all for watching. Ryder, again, thanks for coming on tonight. Hopefully in the future here we'll have some more guest tires. But Ryder's a local here in Casper. He spends a lot of time here in the fly shop, and to be honest, I'd say he's arguably one of the best tires here in Casper. And I like the stuff he does. And in the future here for Facebook Live and YouTube Live, we'll have some other tires. But thanks again, Ryder, and thank you all for watching. And I'll see you guys next week.
Hey, yeah, thanks for the bug for having me. But I think we talked about doing the same deal where first online order over $70, I'll give you all these bugs we tied tonight. We'll throw it in there.
So yeah, it's as per usual. First online order $50.
$50.
You guys will get all these bugs that we tied here tonight. Ryder was nice enough to donate them to us. So if y'all need some fly tying materials, get on Ugly Bug Fly Shop on our online store and get you some tying stuff.
Go buy some hackle.
Yeah, get you some hackle. But thank you guys for watching. It was a lot of fun, and I hope to see you guys all next week. But thank you again. Y'all have a good night.